CTV. Don't blink.
In the news tonight,
there are various categories of schools which must be regulated.
Save the hijacked education sector. An educationist asks government to regulate school fees.
7,000 babies per year are left untouched.
The Uganda Heart Institute has asked for financial support to carry out open heart surgery on over 100 children. And traffic to Western Nile paralyzed after the flooding of Oluyo-Pakwach Road just adjacent to Pakwach Bridge. In sports, Uganda Cranes have secured a ticket to Algeria to participate in next year's CHAN competition after defeating Taifa Stars of Tanzania. Good evening, pleasure to have you here on PM Edition on CTV. I'm Kalachi Brian. Joining me for sign language interpretation is Isaac Luchams. Now, starting us off, educationists have called upon government to come up with a policy to regulate school fees to curb the vice of school proprietors who make irregular increments, forcing parents and guardians to a financial cliff. This comes at a time when schools across the country have drafted hiked fees structures for next term. That starts on Monday. We have more.
Early this week, MPs on the Education Committee asked government to develop a proper strategy to regulate high school fees structures. Legislators were scrutinizing a petition by Kole North Country MP Samuel Opio on the school fees hike in schools across Uganda. He presented it to the committee on Wednesday, 31st August 2022.
The Ministry of Education expedites the enactment of statutory regulations to regulate fees payable by the various schools, preferably before the beginning of the next schooling year in 2023.
In the same vein, educationists have come out to voice a strong concern, calling on government to expedite the enactment of statutory regulations to regulate fees payable by various schools and institutions of learning.
Government is the basic institution that has to regulate education in whatever form and in whatever substance it is supposed to do this. In the first instance, there are various categories of schools which must be regulated, and these have different backgrounds and their interests are different.
Dr. Tom Baloja, a lecturer at College of Education, Makerere University, says government has deliberately neglected its responsibility, which the schools have taken advantage to increase school fees whenever they wish.
Regulating fees is a responsibility of the ministry, but I see a ministry which has abdicated this role, and up to now, ever since the 2008 Act of Education was passed, this thing has not been regulated.
Baloja says if the culture is not tamed, parents will have to choose schools where they can take their children basing on fee structure.
It has now become a fashion that quality of education is associated with the cost put in. When there is a school which is charging highly, they think that is where quality is, and they will run there. Then those who feel like it is a fashion, they will also go in for some schools which are trendy and they are giving their children what they want. Then we have parents who are struggling, and for them, they are inferior. They can't even challenge the fees that have been demanded. So what does this all mean? It goes back to government to look at these dimensions and come up with a policy that will be regulating fees.
Baloja says liberalization is responsible for the situation because most schools operate to maximize profits, not to provide a social service. He says it's possible to standardize fee structure with additional categories but approved by the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Those who want to see their children enjoying luxuries and pleasantries, then these ones can agree with the school to have them increase their funding, but not necessarily to leave everything open because we are in a liberal market where yet we know that we want education is a public service, it's a public good, and it is the one which defines what the country should be in regard to human resource development.
For decades, there have been calls to schools to revisit and amend the way boards of governors in schools are appointed and managed to be in position to respond and handle any arising issues relating to school fee increments and structure alignment.
With just a day to the opening of schools for the third term, parents are perturbed by the high cost of scholastic materials. The business community is also not happy given the fact that fewer parents are shopping for their children as compared to past reopening periods. Take a look.
Chikobo is one of the busiest centers in Kampala business district. It attracts hundreds of shoppers who go shopping for various scholastic materials whenever schools reopen. Chikobo traders say much as some parents and guardians have been busy shopping, the turnout is not what they expected. Prices of items have been hiked. A ream of paper that used to cost 20,000 Ugandan shillings now goes for 30,000 Ugandan shillings. A roll of tissue paper that was at 300 Ugandan shillings is now at 500 Ugandan shillings. Counter black books are at 5,000. Geometry sets are at 5,000 from 2,000 Ugandan shillings. However, Kaseta spokesperson Issa Sechito asked parents not to blame the price hike on traders because they have nothing to do given the current economic crisis.
Nobody thought COVID would come. Nobody knew the price of fuel, of diesel, could come the same as the price of petrol per liter. It is now the situation. So everything is hiked. The business people have no option. Business people cannot be relied on. Why? Because when things come in massive quantities and volumes, they lose it. To the contrary, if they rise or they are scarce, the prices will shoot up and they recover. So there is no definite solution that you'll get from the business people because this is a liberalized economy. It cannot be the same with the education sector because we are selling a service, and a service that goes to the citizens and the younger generation.
He says government increased taxes on various products, which forced traders to hike prices of most products.
The only thing that the government can do is to do import quotas. If it is rims, can they reduce on the prices, on the taxes? Maybe they lax some taxes on essential scholastic materials, or if they cannot, can they appoint some of the reliable business people and tell them to import on relaxed tax bases, tax levels, on those items that are badly needed like pens, rims, and geometry sets and others.
Schools are opening on Monday, September 5th, and some schools asked parents to pay at least half of the school dues. Safi, Mokile Balogu, and Lubega Ibrahim Kasinga for CTV, PM Edition.
Thank you, Sophie Baluko. Now, the Executive Director of Uganda Heart Institute, Dr. John Omagino, says there is need to mobilize money to carry out heart operations on about 100 children that need the service every year. Each heart operation costs shillings 19 million in Uganda and shillings 76 million abroad. We have more.
Dr. Mangino, who was speaking to the president of Rotary International and her team who visited the Uganda Heart Institute today, the institute has 500 children who need open heart surgery. Financial constraints are delaying the operations. According to Omangino, the unit is in position to perform 1,000 procedures if well facilitated.
Come on board who require a surgical intervention. And the only facility we have is this one. It cannot meet that demand. At the highest, it can only handle 1,000. Means 7,000 babies per year are left unattached. to natural life. Either they die or they are destined to miserable life.
Causes of congenital heart defects among children are not clear, but Omangino says the rising number of girls who conceive prematurely as well as women who delay to give birth could be the cause.
The causes of these congenital heart defects, majorly, it's just like any factory. They are factory rejects, but in the human being, it is 1%. Now, the usual causes are not clear, but it has been associated with either mothers who are of a very young age or a very old age. The system is either not yet stable or it is retiring. Two is mothers who are using chemicals like tobacco, cigarette smoking, like so much alcohol, like those ones who have other diseases, including even infections like rubella, and people who are on drugs. Even Septrin in early pregnancy messes up the issues of pregnancy.
Rotary International President Jennifer Jones commended Rotarians in Uganda for their efforts to save life by sponsoring 1,000 heart surgeries every year through Gifts of Life Foundation.
Today, I want to thank you all for the leadership that you provide in your country, the service that you're providing to the children and to their families. As I said, we can't look away when we know there is such an incredible need. And I look forward to hearing of the capacity building, the sustainable capacity building that can come out of the partnerships and the continued dialogue that we have between all of the partners and players involved.
In Uganda, out of the 1.6 million babies born every year, 16,000 children are born with congenital heart defects. 8,000 children have to undergo a corrective operation. Shabim Natebo Wetendo, CTV, PM Edition.
President Museveni, who is also the Commander-in-Chief of Uganda's Armed Forces, has commissioned 248 officer cadets at Uganda Military Academy in Kabamba, Mubende District. Museveni also presided over the graduation of 49 officer cadets who qualified with a bachelor's degree in defense and strategic studies. Details.
Brigade and a secondary school in every division for children of soldiers. The Minister of Defense and Veteran Affairs, Vincent Bamlang Chisempija, thanked the President for starting UPDF from scratch to a formidable force with international acclaim that is growing from strength to strength.
We are all happy to see a very smart UPDF, especially the cadets in front of us.
The Chief of Defense Forces, General Wilson Mbasumbadi, praised Museveni for continuously building a force that is guided by gospel of Pan-Africanism, nationalism, democracy, and socio-economic transformation for the strategic security and unity of the African people.
The foundation of UPDF is anchored on discipline, service with honor and dedication. Live up the UPDF values and attributes, and treat people as they should be treated.
The trainees on the short cadet source were selected from UPDF in-service soldiers, majority of whom were specialists such as medics, engineers, pilots, IT personnel, among others. During the course, the graduates were taken through training in basic military skills and knowledge, several tactical field training exercises and drills, which culminated in a combined arms exercise. Uganda Military Academy Kabamba was relocated from Jinja in 2007. It trains both national and international students.
Now we take a short break. When we return, I have more news for you. Keep it CTV, don't blink. Welcome back to PM Edition on CTV. I'm Kalachi Brian with Isaac Luchams for your sign language interpretation. Now, officials of Uganda National Roads Authority are worried over the rising theft of raw materials that are meant for the construction of Rukunjiri-Ishasha Road. Engineer Samuel Muhozi, UNERA's head of roads and bridges construction, says it's unfortunate that residents who will be benefiting from the new road are participating in the crime.
Moore says the crime is affecting their operations, which could delay the planned completion of the road. He cited a recent theft of heavy machinery, including excavators. Moore says one of the excavators was recovered in Shema district.
There's been a lot of stealing of materials here. Stealing, to the extent of even stealing trucks. There's a truck which was stolen from here and was recovered in Shema. So for CSR, you give back to people when they are supporting you. But if they are stealing from you, actually, you lose the morale of giving much.
He says the compensation of people who will be affected by the project has also delayed the project.
Still, they have already given, but if the community were actually cooperating, they would have benefited more than they have benefited. So I call upon the locals to desist from stealing materials for the road, because what they are stealing belongs to them.
Moores was leading a team of officials who were inspecting the project. He, however, says, despite the challenges, construction is expected to end at the beginning of next year.
There was a family wrangle. A person who owned land, who had the title, died. And we had the
Pakwach Bridge has flooded. According to Uganda National Roads Authority, water levels are still high and their teams are monitoring to start planned interventions as soon as water levels subside. UNERA says the floods have affected connectivity to Pakwach, Arua and other parts of West Nile. The road authority says road users intending to connect to West Nile from Kampala and Lira should use Gulu Ajoman Road to connect to Laropi Ferry to Moyo, while those from Arua are advised to use Moyo to Laropi Ferry to connect to Gulu. Alternatively, according to UNERA, travelers can use the Para-Chisanja Road junction. Finally, after 11 months of no efforts to enforce peace and reconciliation in Mali, Malian ex-rebels and the government. First time the groups have met in 11 months to discuss the major deal, with participants feeling very hopeful. Head of the coordination of Azawadi movements, Ataye Ag Mohamed, is consciously optimistic about the talks. He said the government of Mali and the parties have once again reiterated the commitment to work for the full and consensual implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement. So far, there has been slow progress on the deal, which aims to reintegrate 26,000 former rebels, but Mohamedou Diarra, Chief of Staff of the Ministry of the National Reconciliation of Mali, feels the negotiations are a good step forward. There has been turmoil in Mali since its independence and jihadist insurgencies in the north in 2012. Mali has also seen military coups in 2020 and 2021. A $1 billion project to clean up one of the most polluted places on Earth, the Nigerian region of Ogoniland, has been described by the UN as incompetent, wasteful, and lacking transparency. The Anglo-Dutch oil giant Shell is partly funding the cleanup after leaving Ogoniland in the 1990s following complaints of leaking pipelines. For decades, oil has continued to leak from dormant wellheads, resulting in the once lush mangroves being covered in crude oil and well water smelling of benzene. Shell's huge cleanup began in 2019, backed by the United Nations, and was considered to be one of the most ambitious projects of its kind in the world. But far from improving the situation, documents from the UN Environmental Programme reveal the pollution could now be getting worse. Shell has already paid out more than $175 million in compensation, and the UK Supreme Court has ruled that similar cases could be heard in Britain. The company has faced defeat in 2 recent legal cases brought by communities in the region, including one last year in which The Hague ordered Shell's Nigerian unit to pay unspecified damages to farmers for oil spills that occurred more than 15 years ago. In Russia, the last Soviet Union leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, has finally been laid to rest, instead in a burial not attended by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And India has overtaken the United Kingdom to become the world's 5th largest economy. Here is more. For days after passing away at age 91, Mikhail Gorbachev, the final Soviet leader to bring the Cold War to a peaceful conclusion, has been buried in Moscow. According to the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin did not attend the funeral due to his work commitments. But many people view this as a slight against the guy who managed the dissolution of the Soviet Union. When Gorbachev came to power in 1985, he enacted radical changes and opened the USSR to the outside world. However, he was powerless to stop the Union's dissolution in 1991, and many Russians hold him responsible for the years of unrest that followed. He was well liked outside of Russia, and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres claimed that he had changed the course of history. Like numerous of his Soviet forebears, including Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and Leonid Brezhnev, he lies in state in the ancient columned hall of the House of Unions. Gorbachev has been laid to rest in Novodevichy, the biggest cemetery in Moscow and the final resting place of many notable Russians. According to BBC's Steve Rosenberg in Moscow, the fact that Saturday's event won't be a state funeral indicates that the present Kremlin leadership has little interest in preserving Gorbachev's legacy. It was clearly known that the relationship between Gorbachev and Putin was tense. Their last meeting, according to reports, was in 2006, and the Russian president once referred to the fall of the USSR as the biggest geopolitical calamity of the century. Gorbachev most recently reportedly disapproved of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, although having supported the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. His health had been deteriorating and he had been in and out of the hospital in recent years. He was admitted in June after developing kidney problems. According to Bloomberg, which has cited GDP figures from the International Monetary Fund, India has overtaken the United Kingdom to become the 5th largest economy in the world. New Delhi pushed Britain to the 6th spot in the final 3 months of 2021 to become the 5th biggest economy. The calculation is based on US dollars, with India extending its lead in the first quarter. According to the Bloomberg report, the size of the Indian economy with regards to nominal cash was $854.7 billion US dollars during the quarter through March on an unadjusted basis and using the dollar exchange rate on the last day of the relevant quarter. In contrast, the UK was at $814 billion US dollars. The calculations were done using the IMF database and historic exchange rates on the Bloomberg terminal. The latest report reflects the economic trajectory these two countries have taken in recent months. While the UK is witnessing its worst cost of living crisis, soaring inflation, the highest in 4 decades, and a potential recession that is expected to last well into 2024, according to the Bank of England, the Indian economy, on the other hand, is forecast to grow more than 7% this year. The Bloomberg report said a world-beating rebound in Indian stocks this quarter has just seen their weighting rise to the 2nd spot in the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, trailing only China's. Moreover, the IMF's forecasts show India pegged to overtake the UK in dollar terms on an annual basis this year, putting the Asian powerhouse behind just the US, China, Japan, and Germany. About a decade ago, India was ranked the world's 11th largest economy, while the UK used to remain at the 5th spot. The latest economic performance comes as a major blow to the ruling Conservative Party, which is in the midst of leadership change following the resignation of Boris Johnson. The Tory members who picked Johnson as successor on Monday, with reports indicating a comfortable win for Foreign Secretary Liz Truss over former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. Let's take a short break. When we return, I have some good news for supporters of Uganda Cranes.
Sometimes in life, We spend all the time trying to live other people's life. And along the way, we lose who we are by copying what other people are doing in their relationship.
You see, from the last time I met your sister, I've not spent a day or a minute without thinking about her.
It's a good surprise on a Monday. This is nice.
So you and him are we're just friends. Wow. Come on.
Just friends. You either tell me where you're from or you go back to where you've been. Thinking it would work out for us, but yet to find out that's not who we are after experiencing a great disappointment.
She's in love with some other man, so classy, a gentleman, not poor dogs like you.
These are the mistakes girls do.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Welcome back for our sports news on CTV. Uganda Cranes have secured a ticket to Algeria to participate in next year's CHAN competition. The Cranes defeated Tanzania Stars 3-0 at St. Mary's Stadium in Chitende to win 4-0 on aggregate after a 1-0 win last week in Tanzania. We have more.
Uganda Cranes have secured a 6th appearance at the CHAN Championships today after a dominant 3-0 win over neighbor Tanzania. Uganda advances after a 4-0 aggregate win following a 1-0 win at the Benjamin Mkapa Stadium last week in Tanzania. The Cranes didn't take long to utilize the home advantage as they grabbed the lead as early as the 6th minute through Moses Waiswa after Rogers Mato was brought down in the box. The Taifa Stars from then piled pressure, looking for an equalizer, but the Cranes remained solid at the back and went into the break with the lead. The Cranes got a second goal in the 56th minute when substitute Richard Basangwa scored after a powerful header with Waiswa adding an assist to his goal. The Cranes thereafter maintained possession and put the icing on the cake with 15 minutes left to play. Rogers Mato guided a second header of the game into the back of the net after a fine interplay with Said Cheyune. The Tanzanians pushed on after searching for a consolation goal but were denied by goalkeeper Nathan Adionzi. The Cranes can now start preparing for next year's CHAN Championships that start on January 8th to January 31st. Uganda will look to progressing from the group stages, something they have not done in the last 5 CHAN Championships they have participated in. Noah Walakira, CTV, PM Edition.
Tomorrow at 6:30, Arsenal will confirm whether Manchester United has stabilized or not. Isaac Luchams on sign language is a Manchester United fan and is really worried. Of course, I think he has a reason to get worried. My name is Kalachi Brian. With Isaac Luchams, we wish you a good night.